Today on Locked On Bama, we declare ourselves the best podcast in the world.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama, AHSA Radio Network's Luke Robinson. That's me. Alabama internet legend Jimmy Stein. That's him. I want to thank you every day for being here every day. Thank you, newbies, for being here today. And thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen every single day. You guys are the best. We're going live today. I'm in Mansfield, Ohio, of all places. And, so I've pulled over to do a podcast because there's been so much going on. We wanted to do a pod a little bit later today, and the reason was that Alabama had practice, and we wanted to do it after that. But then so much other stuff has happened. First of all, I went to the Saban Legacy Awards last night. I can't wait to tell you about that. There were some cool stories from that. And then there's just a whole lot of stuff, like people just declaring themselves champions whenever they want to, which I'm down for, and I'll tell you why in the third segment. But Jimmy, Ryan Grubb had some comments about the RB pecking order and about what the running backs are doing. He actually brought up a name that we haven't heard at all this camp.
Kevin Riley.
Yep.
Yeah, he did. He bragged on him. Now, of course, he talked about in this order, he talked about Daniel Hill, and then he talked about Dre Washington, and then he brought up Kevin Riley. He didn't mention Richard Young. And at first I'm like, how do we read into this that he didn't mention Rich at all when he was asked about, okay, what do we do now after Jam? And he didn't mention him. But later in the press conference, for those who haven't watched it, someone specifically asked him about Rich, and he glowed. I mean, it made me think, gosh, that would have been a mistake to read too much into it, because again, I say this all the time about these press conferences, and I've watched a billion of them, and this is one of my takes from them. Let's be honest. When a coach is asked about a player, particularly at that age, an 18 to 22-year-old, they're not going to ever throw them under the bus or overly criticize them, with the small exception if there's something going on off the field and they got to talk about that. I'm talking about on the field performance. Coaches are going to be generally paint a rosy picture and be polite and be nice to the guys on their team. Those are their kids, and they're not going to embarrass them, in those media settings. Let's be honest as fans about what we should expect when a coach is asked. But I say that to say there's only so much they have to say. What I look at is, what did he say beyond what he has to say? He has to say he's working hard, he's doing a good job, he plays physical, we're pleased with where he is. That's what they have to say, because that's, quote, coach speak. That's just being a coach that's responsible for his players. If they go beyond that, we're free, I think, as fans, to read between the lines, okay, and go, wow, he really likes this guy. If all they say is, yeah, he's doing well, we're really pleased with where he's at, and that's all, then you can read between the lines there too, right? But just realize that some level of positivity is something that we should expect as fans when they go above and beyond. And I felt he did. I felt he went above and beyond, especially with Rich and Daniel Hill. And those are the two I expect to see. I agree with Luke that it was almost a little surprising you mentioned Kevin Riley. But to my limited knowledge, I still think Kevin Riley goes into Tallahassee fourth, behind Young, Hill, and Washington.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And again, I thought he was very high on Daniel Hill too.
Yeah.
We have been as well. I mean,
first guy I mentioned. I think just my take. He's busting to play him. He's busting to put him out there.
Well, and he's such an interesting player. I mean, I think he makes things just, it's so dynamic. I think it'd be kind of fun though to have Richard Young come in.
Can I surprise you with something here? I think this might surprise you if you don't know this. This may surprise you. We all know in Grubb's last year at Washington, Dylan Johnson was an all Pac-12 guy and rushed for 1,200 yards, right? I don't believe, someone correct me in the comments if this is wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's right. Dylan Johnson was not supposed to be their running back that year. It was supposed to be another guy, and he got hurt. They went with Dylan Johnson second. Big, physical, doesn't even have ideal measurables. You know how I know that? Dylan Johnson rushed for 1,200 yards and was all Pac-12 and did not get drafted. Undrafted. Then signed by the Buccaneers. He was in camp briefly, cut. Signed this year by the Panthers, briefly, cut. NFL doesn't, I mean, let's be honest, NFL just doesn't think he's a player. He rushed for 1,200 yards in Grubb's offense and was not even the first choice. I think, again, read between the lines here, I think Grubb is sort of in love with the idea of a really big yard chewing back. And that's Daniel Hill. Now, I'll say that, and I'm still sticking with my initial assertion that Rich Young will be the starter in Tallahassee.
Well, I'll say this. There's the interesting thing to me is what I love about it. Okay, do you want to have the big back be in first, sort of the bruiser, and then have a speedier back come in where people are sort of tired of getting hit and maybe a little beat up? Or do you want to have the speedy back in and then have the big guy come in after they're a little gassed? It's pick your poison, I know. And that was what's so great about Derrick Henry. He was both in one. I mean, he's faster than you and bigger and stronger than you.
I love changing styles. I love changing styles when you change backs. I'm a fan of that. Change styles when you change backs. It's fine if you got two or three guys that are all exactly the same because you're putting in fresh legs. I think it's better to put in fresh legs that's a different look, whether it's a speedier guy or whether it's a more physical guy, but just change the look.
Levi Raker says he's about 35 miles from where I am in Mansfield. Just FYI, we are removing the big fountain from 1881 and they're called the Vaspender Fountain in Mansfield and taking it down to Alabama to be restored. Look, if any of y'all watching this, just, our company, Robinson Iron, and you ever want to see something cool stuff, just come over. We're always working on some cool stuff. That's just a personal promo. Nobody's paying me for that.
Well,
but
I think you get paid at your job. I mean, I'm assuming your family pays you something.
I'm supposed to get paid.
I work. My dad owned a truck line most of my life. He owned a truck line, and there's 36 trucks. And one summer, I had to go out there and load trucks one summer. And at the end of the summer, as a proud dad, he sat me down and said, "Well, I've enjoyed having you out here this summer. You think you want to go to college and come back and this is what you want to do?" And I said, "I want to work in the air condition like Uncle Jeff, the lawyer."
Uncle Jeff.
That's right.
Anything else from practice today that stood out to you?
A few things. The offensive line, for sure. The offensive line, look, Jaden Roberts is still out. So the offensive line remained the same. Proctor, left tackle, Wilkin Formby, right tackle, Caleb Dewberry, left guard, Gino Vandermark, right guard, Parker Brailsford, center. I think even if Jaden recovers through concussion protocol in time, he's missed so much practice, and they're so comfortable with that group. I'm anticipating those five being the starters in Tallahassee, pending good health for those five. And then Jaden Roberts, assuming he's past protocol by then, and he should, as per most kids do, then I think he'll play. He'll rotate in because we've talked about rotating a lot. But I think that's the group that's going to start at Tallahassee. What was interesting today, Luke, is the second team. The second team, we've seen it, Jackson Lloyd at left tackle, Mike Carroll at right tackle. That changed. Today, Jackson Lloyd was at right tackle because Olaus was at left tackle, and they moved Michael Carroll inside. Is that going to be permanent? No, I don't think anything's ever permanent. They've moved Olaus around. They've moved Big Mike Carroll around. I think it's about establishing some versatility because the best thing you can do, I mean, this is ideal, right? The best thing that happens, let's say you lose an offensive lineman in a game. He's got to come out. He might not be able to play next week. The ideal thing isn't, okay, who's our next best guard? The ideal thing is, who's our next best player? Who's our next best lineman? Doesn't matter that he's a guard or a tackle. He's the next best player. And I think with that second group, they're trying to build some versatility for that reason. Put in the next best player, not the third guard or the third tackle, the sixth best healthy offensive lineman. So that's my read on that. And I do think that offensive line depth was an issue for this team in the spring. And I give Coach Cap a ton of credit here. I think he's built through moving players around. I think we have more depth right now than the worry was in the spring. So tip of the cap to Coach Cap. See what I did there?
Very nicely done. And I doubt that joke's ever been said before. Want to tell everybody now about PrizePicks. We're happy that they're back on board with us. We appreciate PrizePicks. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason is already heating up, and college football ain't far behind, y'all. Look, you want to get involved in football, and you want to be excited for Josh Allen and Aaron Rodgers and Saquon Barkley or Richard Young or Daniel Hill or whoever. Well, PrizePicks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 play. That is PrizePicks, where you run your game. Then there's also DripDrop. When you're playing PrizePicks, it may wear you out. So you want to stay hydrated. If you're into staying on top of your routine, whether that's workouts, long days on campus, or staying focused through back-to-back classes, hydration is where it all starts, and that's where DripDrop comes in. DripDrop is a doctor-developed and scientifically proven method for fast hydration. It uses the perfect balance of sodium electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and a half. I'm talking a half the sugar of a leading sports drink. My go-to flavor is all of them. It says on there I'm supposed to talk about my go-to flavor. I love them all. You can't go wrong. It's not like I have one flavor. They're all delicious. I love them. I can mix them all together and put them in one giant jug. I'd be happy with it. Right now, DripDrop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head to DripDrop.com. Use promo code LOCKEDONCollege. Again, these promos are so easy. They're all Locked On College. That's DripDrop.com. Promo Locked On College, 20% off. Stock up now because it's hot out there, y'all, and you don't want to be hot. Okay, so the Saban Legacy Awards were last night.
Mm-hmm.
And if you'll indulge me for a second, I'm going to give you a few things, and then I'll let you say a few things too, Jimmy. It was good to go because there were a lot of people I knew, and there were some good folks there. I mean, it's put on by the Monday Morning Quarterback Club, and I really appreciate the invite. So they were honoring Pat Dye, and I know most of you are going, boo. Okay, I get it.
Former Alabama assistant.
Yeah.
Former Alabama assistant.
He was coaching either.
Well, I think you just always introduce him as that former Alabama assistant Pat Dye, and that's how you introduce him, and he was really good in that role.
It works. And then David Cutcliffe was also
former Alabama student.
Yep, who has a million ties to Birmingham. Well, I'll say this about the Pat Dye stuff. It was cool. Pat Dye Jr. got up there and he spoke. And for those who don't know, I'll tell you a quick funny Pat Dye Jr. story. So my brother and another friend, were playing with Pat Dye Jr. and somebody. And my brother's friend was like having the best golfing day of his life, and he's kind of a smart aleck. And Pat Dye Jr. like missed a putt or something like that, and they're going head to head. And then he got a call as soon as he missed his putt, so he picked up his phone. And my brother's friend said, "If that's your daddy, tell him we're kicking your ass." I just thought that was funny. But now,
that's reasonably funny.
So Pat Dye Jr. gets up, and the first thing I'm going to tell you, Nick Saban was obviously there. The first thing he says is, "Y'all don't know how much it means to me to be up here, and I can't tell y'all how much I admire Nick Saban." So whenever some of y'all hear the name Pat Dye and you cringe a little bit because of the Auburn ties, I get it. I grew up as a youngster when Auburn was kicking chicken with Pat Dye. At the same time, my respect for both of those guys jumped so much because Pat Dye Jr. got incredibly emotional. I'm talking about breaking down into tears, talking about his father. And if you have children, you know that means a lot to you. That's really all you'd want as a dad, is eventually one day they get emotional talking about you. Because, right now I got a bunch in college, and they get emotional when I don't give them the money they want. So and I thought that was very cool. He also waxed poetic about Bear Bryant. It was like, Bear took a chance on my dad. My dad had never coached, never done anything. And Bear took a chance on him. And if it's not for Bear, there is no Pat Dye. There is no all this legacy. And, there's none of this. And I thought that was incredibly respectful. And I mean, I was really impressed with Pat Dye Jr. Of course, Saban had a lot of interesting things to say. He did have the comment.
He's an agent for people that don't know that.
Yeah.
Sports agent. For
he also
people listening may not know.
He also mentioned that, Saban only recommends like 3 or 4 agents. And he said, I'm one of them. So he said, and because Alabama had all this talent, I got all these guys. And if not, because Saban recommended me. And, he was like, I can't tell you how much that means to me. And I mean, it was very cool to see somebody who's obviously been involved with football really talk about his dad. He had another cool thing he said. He said, my dad's in every Hall of Fame there can be. He's in the College Hall of Fame, the Alabama Hall of Fame, the Georgia Hall of Fame, the Auburn Hall of Fame, the College Football Hall of Fame. He said, but you know what? When it comes to me, he's in the Hall of Fame of dads. And I mean, like, this got me a little bit, Jimmy. I loved it. I just thought it was great.
Did you go home and watch Field of Dreams?
I did not, but I got a couple other funny stories. I just thought I know it's Locked on Bama, but trust me, some of these are worth listening to if you didn't see it last night. The Bryant respect was everywhere and crazy. Rick Neuheisel was there, and he told a story. So Pat Dye Jr., they had a valet service come get him. Well, Rick James. That'd have been even cooler if he'd been there. Rick Neuheisel.
They're both singers.
Rick Neuheisel's in his car riding there, and he's talking to the driver, and the driver goes, yeah, I love me some Auburn. I've always been an Auburn guy. And Rick Neuheisel goes, yeah, that's great. Oh, okay. He goes, Auburn means so much to me. And Rick Neuheisel's like, okay, like whatever, just drive. And then the guy goes, and your dad meant so much to me. And he goes, who do you think I am? He said, you're Pat Dye Jr., right? He goes like, no. So Rick Neuheisel stole his ride, which I thought was kind of funny. He also, Randy Campbell, who's a former quarterback for Auburn, he talked about how little Pat Dye liked to pass. And he said that, one game they were playing Maryland, I think, or something. And he said they didn't want to pass. And he said he played 6 quarterbacks that day, and he hated all of us. So, and then a couple other things. I'm going to call myself out. For some reason, I had it in my mind, because I have terrible vision and memory and face placement, that this gentleman standing in the corner.
Terrible combination.
That is a bad combo. You should see the weird houses I walk in, thinking it's my house. So I saw this dude from across the way, and I said, I'm going to go say hi to Corey Reamer. I went up to go speak to Corey Reamer, and I said, hey, Corey. He said, I'm John Parker. It's John Parker Wilson, and I just called him Corey Reamer because I'm an idiot. And then I also want to say this, that Greg Byrne was there. Greg Byrne came up to me, said his son loves the podcast. He's watched it occasionally, and he said his son Davis, he's got 2 sons, Nicholas and Davis. I think he said Davis watches the podcast. Now, I appreciate, and I said, I'm going to give your son a shout out. So Davis, unless it's Nicholas, I appreciate both of you. So y'all are great people. And then let me see. There was one other thing that I was going to say about all this. Oh, by the way, in the airport today, I was leaving for Ohio. Want to shout out Jason Delgado and Sean Lovejoy, who came up to me out of nowhere. So appreciate y'all. I just thought it was such a cool event. It's one of those things. I've never been big into banquet stuff.
I think I've met Sean. I think I've met Sean.
Oh, you probably have.
I think I have. Okay.
But I've never been big into banquet stuff because I always think it's full of. It just seems like everybody's there, full of fluff. But I'm telling you,
Jimmy, rubber chicken. The rubber chicken. Is this the rubber chicken circuit?
Is the rubber chicken circuit?
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, it's different. With Nick Saban there. Yep. Because I don't think anybody wants to be fluff when Nick Saban's involved. And he's at this every year. It's the Nick Saban Legacy Awards. And it seems like he just brings out something in other people. Now, maybe it'd be the same if he weren't there. I don't think so, though. I think there's something about him. And Saban, started talking about all the history of college football. And he's like, a lot of things are changing, and he's like, we don't know what it's going to be like. And you can tell how much he cares about college football. I mean, Nick Saban gets this reputation as being this heartless cyborg. Mostly that comes from us because we said it a million times. He's a cyborg. I still think he's a cyborg.
I still think he might be.
I think he's a cyborg with emotion.
Like Spock.
He's a
There's a little
robot that
Spock in him.
learned a robot that learned to love. All right.
Wall-E. Was Wall-E about that? I don't know. I'm sure the
You know,
most
that'd be funny if he went Saban, something.
I'm sure the most disappointing part of the night for you, though, was when Nick Saban stood up and said, now the award for Best Alabama Podcast by one guy from Alexander City and one guy from Fairhope, and they gave it to someone else, and we later found out we came in 5th.
It wouldn't shock me, not one bit. But look, now we got a whole miscellaneous thing here in this next segment. It's going to be fun. But I want to tell you guys about OpenPhone. If you're running a business, every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you needed a service if the person didn't answer. Did you wait? I didn't, and probably not you. You moved on. That's why you need OpenPhone, so you never miss an opportunity to connect with your customers. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communications. Look, do you juggle 2 phones just to keep your business and personal calls separate? OpenPhone can solve that right now. And the AI agent handles after-hour calls, answers common questions, and captures leads, so I never have to miss a customer again. See why over 60,000 businesses trust OpenPhone. They're offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedoncollege. That's openphone.com/lockedoncollege. And they'll even port over your existing numbers for free. OpenPhone, no missed calls and no missed customers. That makes everybody happy when you're in business. Okay, so a couple of things. Rivals, and I think it was right. Or was it on 3? Josh Payton on 3, I think it was, came up with their predictions for the playoffs.
That's Josh Payton. Yeah, it's just Josh, I think.
Okay, so it's just, but he's with On 3, so I guess
associated with On 3 now. Yeah. So I think some of his graphics are probably created by some On 3 people. Some of them, I think his own show creates some. I think On 3 creates some. If y'all want to know the inside skinny.
Yeah. So, what'd you think of him? Did you take a look at him?
The only thing I've seen from Josh is his predictions for the conference championship games. Who's going to win the conferences and who's going to be in the conference championship games? I've seen that. I've not. Well,
let me tell you. Here's his list. Here's his playoff prediction, and it gets pretty cool. Ohio State and Arizona State in the 7-10 game. Nebraska and Notre Dame in the 11-6.
Nebraska. By the way,
man, I've seen Nebraska in a few of these, and I don't know what everybody's
There
on.
is a year 3 Matt Rule thing. Matt Rule in his year 3s at Temple and Baylor exploded. Much like Kalen DeBoer's year 2s. Matt Rule's a year 3 guy.
Now, then there's Clemson and Boise State. And then there's Georgia, Florida. Whoa.
Florida.
Now, that's 8-9, and that's the 8-9 game. Now, and then the second round would be the winner of Georgia, Florida against Penn State, winner of Clemson, Boise against Oregon, winner of Nebraska, Notre Dame against Texas, and winner of Ohio State, Arizona State, Alabama. Pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah, it really is. And I like a couple of those picks. I do think Florida's good. I know any Florida fans listening are going to get super mad and send me even more hate mail. But Florida, to me, if Florida's in the playoff, they well earned it. One thing Josh said, I totally agree. I think Florida gets in at 9-3 with their schedule. Yeah. They get in at 9-3. They should get in at 9-3. I just don't even think they'll finish 9-3. I think the schedule's just too hard. The SEC again. I did the math again earlier today because it blows me away. It gets very little comment, but the SEC at home last year, the league as a whole, 83-31. 14 of the losses were by 3 teams. It's just hard to win on the road in this league. Only 2 teams in the whole league had less than 2 losses at home. I mean, 2 losses on the road. Only 2. Texas and weirdly South Carolina, which was probably a product of their schedule.
Yeah, and I listened to Shane Beamer. I listened to Shane Beamer some today. He was on one of the national shows, and it was interesting. You can tell. I think he's going to have a bit more weight on his shoulders, and that's why maybe I'm not as high on South Carolina as others. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm fine with South Carolina doing well. I'm not one of those people that like just hates all the SEC team. I want South Carolina to have some success, not against us, but I want them to taste success. I think their fans deserve it. But I think it's going to be different when they can't sneak up on folks.
How about this? I'll proclaim loudly and talk about getting hate mail. Here it comes. I think South Carolina's disappointing season based on their expectations doesn't make the playoff and may finish 8-4 or 7-5, but beat Alabama.
Ooh, we got to give our predictions. By the way, we don't have many days left to do our predictions, but we got to do that before next Saturday at least. Now, the one thing that was getting a lot of play on Twitter, and actually I had some fun with it because one of our friends sent me a meme of the Michael Scott thing where if you're an Office fan like I am, you remember when he was in a lot of debt and Creed talked him into declaring bankruptcy. So he just walked out of the break room and said, I declare bankruptcy. And then Oscar comes in and goes, you can't just say bankruptcy and get it. He goes, I didn't say it. I declared it. Well, somebody played off that with Auburn declaring all these new national championships. Now, first of all, I'm going to go ahead and say that if you're an Auburn fan, the first thing I would point to is Alabama in 1941. That is a bogus championship. We should not claim it. I'm on board.
We don't claim it here, but we do claim 66 and 77. So
we should claim 66. We should probably claim 77. But I'm going to say this: there is no universe where Auburn should claim 1993. Give me a break, please.
1993.
They claim 93 now.
They were on probation.
Well, not only were they on probation, Jimmy, we had an SEC championship game that they couldn't play in, and then they couldn't play in a bowl game. So
they didn't prove it in Atlanta or prove it in a bowl game. They just had an undefeated regular season.
It's just silly. And so the one thing I'm going to say this though, here's where I'm like, okay, if we're going to play that game, this is where my good friend and your good friend Michael Southern comes in. Tide Hoops History. Go check him out on Twitter. It's actually at Bama History, but his Tide Hoops History is the name. This is his tweet. If schools are retroactively claiming more championship, it's time for the Alabama men's basketball to embrace the 1929-1930 season when the Crimson Tide finished 20-0, the only unbeaten team in program history. The Primo Porretta Power Poll, whatever the heck that was, retroactively named Alabama the 1930 national champ. So I'm going to say this. If we are doing this now, and we're, by the way, doing this, we're just making a mockery of the whole thing. We're tearing down all the traditions of college football. We're talking about 2018 playoffs. Now that Auburn's done this, more teams are going to do it. LSU's already like, we won the title in 58. No, we did. I mean, and I know there were some, shared titles, and we have some too. And we were a part of this. Now, we were a part of this in the early 80s or whatever when we decided to put this in the program. We were still kind of a part of this. And if we didn't ever put 1941 in there, I'm not sure any of this would ever come up.
So we can just declare things now. We can just declare them, like Michael Scott. If we declare then it's official.
And I mean, that's the thing. So I'm with Michael Southern.
I declare my high school girlfriend was Christy McNichol.
That's why I declared this the best podcast on planet Earth. Now listen,
as long as you declared it,
it's done.
It cannot be torn asunder.
Anyway,
it's Christy McNichol's lawyers.
Christy McNichol's calling me and saying, "Shut your yapper. You aren't the best." Regardless, what I'm worried about is everything we love about college football, Jimmy. Everything was so different, and it's human nature to take something so beautiful, so perfect, the Garden of Eden. Just don't eat the apple. You got to try the apple. Everybody loves an apple tart, but and we have college football, this great sport, and we finally got it sort of figured out with 4 teams. Like, you do still have a chance. You got all this, but we got to give everybody a chance. Oh, and what if you only lose 2 games? Why should that hurt you? Or what if you only lose 3 games? Now we're talking about 28 teams and you're going 7-5. It's awful.
I've said this a million times on the show, and I'm going to say it a million more. Every time I hear anyone out there pitch an expanded playoff field, it just sounds to me like they're saying, I need some way to get my 7-5 team in the playoff. Can y'all help me? Can y'all help me get my 7? We're not going to be good enough to win all the games or even most of them, but we want to be in the playoff too. So how can you help my average team get in? And we sort of have that now because, frankly, I know people get tired of me talking about Alabama in the playoff last year, but we did have average teams in the playoff last year. And I know I pick on Indiana and SMU when I say that because I do think they were average football teams compared to the elite. I would even say Clemson was pretty average. They did have 3 losses before they made it through the ACC qualification process. But with 12 teams, I'm upset that we haven't figured out how to get the 12 best teams. I don't think we have.
That's the problem.
I don't think we even had the 12 best teams.
Now, as we close out, Sweet Southern Comfort TBC says, quick, another analogy. There are a few commenters in our comments that say, Luke tells too many analogies. That's how I talk. If you want to get a podcast and be short and sweet and not have analogies, I'm all for it. I wanted to call this Locked On Analogies. The powers that be said I can't do it.
I refer to them as parables.
Look, and by the way, that Adam and Eve apple thing, that's the only biblical thing I know, despite my name being Luke. So, all right. That's going to do it for today's pod. We'll be back tomorrow with more. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.
All right, I got you.